Whenever I deal with sellers or clients, because I'm always on the sell side, I like to think about valuation this way. And I do use the hypothetical construct of fair market value because fair market value basically is a value whereby neither the buyer nor the seller are any sort of compulsion to transact, right? And typically buyers aren't under compulsion to transact, although sometimes they are. In the case of Verbell and Halo, I would argue that Halo felt like they were compelled to buy because if they didn't buy, their business would disappear, be eaten up by Verbell. So in that particular case, we could argue there was some compulsion. But usually there's no compulsion to buy. Sometimes there's a compulsion to sell. You've got a business owner who gets sick. You've got somebody facing bankruptcy. You've got one business owner owns one business, but she also owns another business. That business is going to the tank. She has to free up cash, so on and so forth. So we don't have any of these exogenous issues that'll cause somebody to have to transact. We've got a buyer, we've got a seller, neither under compulsion. But the buyer's not able to create any synergies from the deal, meaning it's a financial play. So in a hypothetical construct like fair market value, the buyer is buying the business for the quote unquote intrinsic value of the cash flows. So that's what I think about from a fair market value standard perspective. And whenever I deal with sellers on the sell side, I say, okay, if we think about a hypothetical construct, fair market value, your business is worth, and I'll make this up, you've got a business worth roughly $50 million, right? So that's what it's worth. That's what it's worth to you, the seller. So if you were to buy out a partner, if you were to take on some minority financing, it would be done at roughly a $50 million enterprise value. But I like my clients also to think about the fact that fair market value is all that they really have to sell, but that's not what they're going to sell for. They're going to sell for the high end of the strategic value range or the investment value range, meaning now we're in a position where we're talking about compulsion. So in this particular case, when I talked about Halo and Verbell, Halo did have a compulsion to buy. I mean, I can tell you right now, Verbell's fair market value was nowhere near 240 million, right? So we've got buyers that might have a compulsion to buy. But then we talk about synergies, right? So synergies come into the mix. And in the same way I talk to sellers about the fact that fair market value is all they really have to sell. When you think about it from a buy side perspective, again, I'm not a buy side guy, but if I were on the buy side and I looked at a deal and I thought, okay, it's worth roughly 50 million bucks to the sellers, but for me, the acquirer, I can go in there and I can cut $1 million in costs because there's a lot of redundancies. And if I'm paying, 10 times cash flow and I can cut out $1 million from the bottom line, I've created $10 million in value right there. I can now cross-sell my products and services to this wider customer base. And the target, I can take the target's products and services and sell them to my customer service base. And I might be able to create another $1 million in cash flow there, right? So now I've created $2 million in cash flow from the combination. And at 10 times, if that's what these things are going for, I've created 20 million in value. So now that business is worth 70 million to me. But I don't know. Is it right for me to write the check to the seller for 70 million bucks? I mean, I'm the one taking the risk. I'm the one the buyer, I'm creating these synergies here. Why should I pay this guy $70 million for his business when it's really only worth 50 million bucks? And I think that's an important concept for buyers to think through. It's like, okay, it's effectively a $50 million business. How much value am I creating? And then the sell side process is where buyer and seller out in the open market fight for that room in between, the value creation zone. So value will be created by this strategic transaction, $20 million, let's say. Now, the fight between buyer and seller is how much will the buyer and how much will the seller be able to extract from that transaction of the created value from the combination. Unfortunately for buyers, particularly in buoyant markets, sellers, if they're running process correctly, extract the majority of the value created, right? So on that particular deal, we might see a situation where a buyer would be forced through a competitive bidding process to pay $69 million to that company. And the buyer can be like, damn, taking a lot of risk, and these guys are extracting a lot of the value that I'm creating. But at the end of the day, if I pay $69 million for this business and it's worth at least 70 to me, I'm still creating value by doing the deal. And that's some of the math that buyers do behind the scenes. What I hear most often from our clients here at Potomac is the extreme value in working with us years in advance of a sale. Not only do we help establish a fair market value in a range of investment values for the client, but we provide them a roadmap of everything they could possibly do in order to increase value and decrease risk in anticipation of a future sale. If you've got a sale on the horizon, whether it be 6 months from now or 5 years from now, we'd love to have a chat with you. Please use the contact form below in the description to reach out to us today. And feel free to share this masterclass series with somebody who you think might benefit from it. Again, I'm Paul Giannamore. Thank you for joining me today, and I'll see you on the next one.